Hey.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Netcure Cyber live session. My name is Vivian, and I'll be your host today. Thank you all for joining us from different locations. Whether you're a cybersecurity professional, student, business leader, IT administrator, or simply interested in technology and cybersecurity, um, we are excited to have you with us. So today's topic is API Cloud User, where we AI bridge you first. So artificial intelligence is reshaping the cybersecurity landscape, and while organizations are leveraging AI to improve their defenses, threat actors, and are also using AI to automate attacks, and also to enhance campaign and discover vulnerability faster. So they is to exploit weaknesses at scale. So this raises a critical question. If an attacker uses AI to target your organization today, where is the most likely point of compromise? So will it be through API that connects our applications? Will it be through cloud environments that power our infrastructure? Or will it be through users who interact with these systems every day? So to help us explore this important topic, we have two distinguished speakers with us. So we have Mr. Chibweze, and we also have Mr. Emmanuel. Thank you all. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining this session.
Yep. Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you, Vivian.
yeah,
Happy
thank
to be
you.
here.
Yep. Okay, so Emmanuel, you want to go first? So that we could. So you want me
Yeah.
to? Okay, please go ahead.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining this session. Um, so I will just start with the topic. So AI, or where would AI breach you first? Is it the API? Is it the cloud, or is it through the user? So I think it's a very interesting topic to look at. Seeing how AI is everywhere. Everyone is using AI. Everyone wants to have some form of AI in their environment. In short, everyone already has some form of AI. We'll see some of those things as we continue the discussion. Let me start with I wouldn't say there's a direct answer to this question. So I'll just start with giving my opinion on this topic. So AI would most likely breach users first, because obviously users are the weak link in everything in people process technology. We have people who are always the weak link, and for APIs, API is almost like the entry point. So any web application you have, mobile application, whatever it is, servers, some of them have these APIs, and I call it the entry point. But for AI to be able to breach that, it will succeed mainly because of the users using or setting up those APIs or those platforms, integrating the APIs to those platforms. For example, developers. So there are lots of developers right now that don't implement what they call SDLC, the secure development lifecycle. They just build applications based on with their basic software development knowledge, not implementing security, which is a major problem that we've seen. And vibe coders. So I want to maybe share maybe a story or just an experience. So vibe coders, I don't know if anyone has heard that concept of vibe coding. It's something I also decided to get into with AI. So where we have AI now, we have these different LLMs that are out there, Claude and ChatGPT and all of that. So we want to create maybe you want to create an application. Even most organizations now, they feel like there's no need to hire software developers. Since there's AI, you can as well just use it to create whatever web app, mobile app you want to do, and that's it. So that's what we call vibe coding. You just create what you want just for the fun of it, and hopefully you can put it out there in the market. But there are risks involved, and AI is helping to should I say extend the risks that are involved in vibe coding. And then also end users, those using it also could also should I say introduce some of these vulnerabilities or some of the risks that AI would eventually exploit. So I think, Chibueze, what do you think about the whole concept of AI in terms of the usage and how people are currently using it right now?
Okay, so thank you, Manuel. Please confirm I can be heard.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So you've actually given a good start to introducing the AI, the buzzwords all over the industry. Of course, today people talk about AI, 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 right? AI for us is simply trying to increase your productivity.
Yeah.
There's nothing new today that AI is doing. It's just that AI is actually amplifying it. AI is actually making it faster within a short time, saving man hours, allowing analysts to focus on more important things, especially for business interesting use cases, so that they could be more productive. Also tend to help you develop yourself as a person, and of course, indirectly giving back to the enterprise where you work or where you find yourself. So AI is sort of, in terms of the topic, API cloud user, where will AI hit first? So Emmanuel has also, like I said, done justice to it. Just to add my few cents, he mentioned several LLMs like the Cloudy, the ChatGPT, the Copilot, and the likes. These on their own has their own vulnerabilities, or should I say their own risk factors, right, to consider. Because one thing we found in most environments is that when you get or when you buy the services or procure the services of AI as a service, for example, or trying to use AI as part of your day-to-day engagement, you need to also ensure that there is a framework that guides those usage, so that users don't just keep giving any prompts. Users don't share some PII or very sensitive information on the AI platform, right? Because trust me, they tell you, okay, yes, this is actually being paid for. They've signed NDA, non-disclosure agreements with the company providing such services. However, users, there has to be some level of constraint, there has to be some level of awareness, there has to be some level of policies guiding AI interactions. So for me, it's not a question of where will AI hit first, because in all fairness, it depends on the attacker, right? It depends on how skillful the attacker is, how experienced, how good that attacker is. Some attacker can actually choose the difficult path. And again, difficult path is relative, because I can choose to say I'm going with the API because, of course, API is everywhere. Flutter Wave, Paystack, whatever it is, they have API that talks to API in terms of microservices, API in terms of user to machine interaction, and the like, scattered everywhere. So they are exposed over the internet. But however, some attacker may say no, users are the weakest link. And of course, there's a rule of thumb that says users are the weakest link, because you can have a maturity model, you can have a CMMI maturity capability model that speaks to how structured the environment is in terms of security frameworks, in terms of controls that you have in place. But then a single user, especially a privileged user, can just put all the controls to waste. So it all depends on where you, the attacker again. But then for the benefit of picking one as the first hit, I want to say the APIs. Like Maria has said, APIs are actually very exposed. But then today, prior to the advent of API adoptions, because people were actually slow to using API, or people were actually slow to even understanding the concept of API. API has been invoked far back as how many ages ago. But however, people are not getting used to API. Why? Because of the security breaches as a result of API compromise. You understand? So API again is the entry point. You can of course go to showdown.io and tend to scan IoT devices in the globe. Showdown.io will give you some level of intelligence or some information gathering, like a reconnaissance, right? That you are doing to see those digital footprints on the global World Wide Web Internet, right? And from there, you start pivoting, start, charging, start analyzing, and of course, it gives you the weaknesses. So why AI now is more deadly is because human engagement, by virtue of being a human, you tend to you tend to have this fatigue because you are not a machine. But AI can be scripted, or AI can be orchestrated to run 24/7. But a human cannot do that, right? There has to be a handshake from the people on the first shift, second shift, and the third shift. And don't forget, in the course of the handshake, there are one or two gaps that will be introduced, because the first person on shift passing on to what they've done to the next person coming on board would not be 100%. It may be like 95, it may be like 98, but those 2% information gap is a problem. But AI keeps on trying to attack the APIs to discover vulnerabilities and keep on hitting, right? Trust me, you will see, because they have publicly accessible APIs, yes, because they don't have much of a controls around them. But however, for those proper APIs that does financial servicing, the level of controls that people have come to realize, they are now self-aware, to ensure that controls are put in place to mitigate this risk. But then again, the blast radius is actually wide, because attackers can just sit at the comfort of their home, go to Cloudy, go to ChatGPT, like Emmanuel has said, register. You have the free version and you have the upgrade version. You can as well tell it to carry out or teach you how to run a script against 1,000 endpoints at the same time. It will help you do that. And then you orchestrate all of those attacks. That's an AI, right? Within minutes, you've targeted up to 1,000 endpoints. So for me, because due to the nature and how APIs are deployed, yes, of course, it gives you that very bigger blast radius. Don't forget, cloud is Cloud is the mine, right? Where we have every resources found. But however, how do I get to the cloud? A user has to access the cloud, right? Or somebody has to access the cloud via API calls. So you want to agree with me that if I want to compromise first, I'm targeting the APIs, because any compromise, successful compromise of an API, then whatever it is that is behind that API would actually be brought to the fore. So that I'll stop here for now on that particular premises. Thank you.
Yeah,
Emmanuel,
thank you very much. I think you really said a lot of things that I even personally I've experienced. There was one software I was trying to develop. Again, I call it vibe coding. So as I was developing it, I integrated with cloud, and at some point I needed to, for the mobile application, I needed to connect it to Google Maps and some of those
okay.
other APIs. Yeah, and so
Exactly.
for me to do that, I needed API keys. I needed to get those API keys, and then which is what helps to authenticate and add some form of security. But what I noticed was that in error, some of those API keys were also now published on my, because I when I after creating, I just pushed to GitHub. So what I noticed was that some of those keys were pushed to GitHub, and I was lucky because it was not a public. The GitHub, that particular project was not public. If not, anyone who does his search, who is able to pull from the repo, would also have access to those API keys and some of those things. So it's easy to get compromised. And again, this was me working with Cloud AI. It was mostly doing most of the development. I was just telling it what to do and giving it prompts on what I want to the application to look like. But in the end, these are the risks that exists within around the API space. And before, I think when it comes to API hacking, people usually do what they call manual testing, where you just get your Bob Suite or you get your Postman, and then you're clicking every button, trying to get the request for or seeing what all those buttons do on the web application or the mobile application while getting the data. So you're checking for all the endpoints. What API endpoints can I find in this entire web application or mobile application? So after finding all of that, then you can now start checking for any vulnerabilities on those endpoints. But with AI right now, you don't necessarily need to go through. You still need to use the Bob Suite, you still need to use the Postman, but now it hastens the process. It makes everything faster. So with AI, you're now able to analyze documents, the documentation of the API. You're able to discover endpoints way quicker than you using the manual process. You can send or test multiple requests, find authorization flaws, and all of those other things. There's also I saw one. It's almost like Chat GPT. I think it was an LLM that was created by someone. So it's called hacking API GPTs. Yeah, if I remember. Yeah. So what it does is it enables you to put prompts. So you can easily just type a prompt and say based on the following endpoints. So that's if after you've gotten the list of the endpoints, the API endpoints, you can say based on the following endpoints, which are the most concerning. So now what this does is that it scans those or it checks those endpoints, and then it starts giving you the vulnerabilities that it can find, and then explain the reason for those vulnerabilities and how they could be exploited. Again, this is not, I know there are cases where you want to you put a prompt and then maybe ChatGPT or Cloud is saying, oh, we can't give you this information. But in this case, it's not the case because you are working, it's like you're prompting it that you are doing a pen test or something like that. But now it's doing those checks and it's giving you ideas of, based on these endpoints that we've checked, we can see that this application is vulnerable to maybe broken object level authorization, or it could be business logic flaws, it could be broken authentication, it could even be idle. So whatever vulnerability it finds, it notifies you, so that makes the work quicker, and then it tells you how it could be exploited or how threat actors would typically exploit it. So again, with AI, this is just hastening the process of bypassing those API flaws or vulnerabilities. So in most cases, I've seen it's usually a case of authentication. And like you rightly said, I think 90% of applications that run currently on the internet have some form of API integration. So it's either you're integrating to Paystack, which is a payment gateway, or Google Maps, or the weather API. Exactly. Yeah. So there's some form of integration there. So I think it's important that for every integration that has to do with API, there has to be some form of secure coding done in the first place. Um, and whoever is integrating with those API doesn't just need to integrate without having the knowledge of the vulnerabilities that exist with API. Because someone like me now, before, I never really knew much about vulnerabilities that existed within APIs, and I was trying to vibe code. So, and I was using API keys, I was using all those things, but I didn't know the dangers until when I wanted to start those projects or the projects. Then I started researching, and I was seeing the possible vulnerabilities or the risks that those APIs could face if not well secured. So I think it's really important. Can you recall this leads me to the whole supply chain attack. I think there was something about Remita API. I'm not sure. I mean, that was alleged. I don't know if you saw it.
Yes, it was an
Y- Yeah,
alleged statement by
exactly.
a guy like that that said they
Yeah,
compromised Remita, then they targeted Sterling and all of that.
exactly. So
So it's
it's
an
just
alleged indeed, yeah.
Yeah, so it's just saying that again, there's this supply chain attack is also a major risk there, where you are integrating with someone, you're using someone's API, or you're integrating someone's API. Just from that integration, the attacks could move from one organization to a different organization, just from some insecure management of everything API in that integration. So I think it's a really interesting thing. But there are lots of takeaways for any organization using APIs, and I'm sure we'll get to that point. Um,
Yeah, that's actually spot on. Vivian, so
in terms of what about this AI agents? What do you think about AI agents like co-pilots and all these things that have access to like proprietary data in terms of, I mean, because it's still all those things are some integrations they have to do with API integrations. What do you think about them and the risks they pose?
okay, so mm, so before now, you don't see, like they say, there's a rule of thumb that says AIs are created majorly to be fluent,
Yeah.
right? AI created majorly to be fluent, but now they are thinking. That's why when you hit a prompt, when you type a prompt and hit enter, you see the first thing to say that shows you says thinking, right? It
Mm-hmm.
more or less tells you that it has gone beyond the traditional prompt engagement, the traditional chat button to it's now an autonomous system, right? That can receive your prompts, try to engineer your prompt, make meaning or make sense of your prompt, even go further ahead to analyze it properly, just like a human would do. You see that form of intelligence built into the system. So it's just like saying you have an immigration agent that does your visa processing and the likes, or a custom agent, the same thing that this actually does for you, right? So it answers questions independently, right, on behalf of a person. But however, if you flip it, like Emmanuel has asked, the risk involved here is, of course, when you're setting up your AI agent, there are other integrations, there are other privileges that agent needs to have. Now, if you don't manage those privileges, if you don't build framework to guide the agent's engagement, then of course you're actually now susceptible to identity theft, because AI in the real sense is actually like a human computer doing stuff on its own, doing stuff by itself, of course, based on the program it has been designed or created or built to do, right? So you need to actually be very careful when you are developing one, when you are creating one, because now people just sit down at the comfort of their homes and just hit the button, do this, do this, do this. AI, the agent actually goes far and beyond to even assess some of those sensitive data. If you're not careful, you can as well in your environment today tell Copilot, or if you are using the DeepSeek or whatever it is that you are using, the Claude and the rest, tell it to check a mail that was sent to somebody. Of course, you're a copy, right? Somebody to get that copy of the email. Trust me, it will go and fetch that email. What do you think is happening there? There are actually shadow accesses that these things are granted, right? There's a Microsoft Graph permissions that people also grant to the cloud. There are actually privileges that are assigned to this agent that enables them to perform those requests efficiently and more accurately, right? So in that regard, people are now subletting their function, giving everything that in short. And that risk again, Emmanuel, is the brain drain. AI is a weapon, or AI agent, so to speak, is a weapon. So it depends on how you use it. It's just like a knife now. A knife could be used to kill. A knife also could be used to cut something, maybe cut your yam in the kitchen and stuff. So it depends on how you use it. So the AI agents, you need to be very, very careful because it's actually very invasive. You need to actually look at the permissions that you're granting it. Otherwise, it can as well go to your payroll and retrieve the CEO's salary. Trust me, if you connect it to that far, it can actually retrieve even some unintended engagement that was never meant for you, right? So those shadow accesses are one of those high security risks that people don't really dim their searchlight on. You need to provide proper governance around anything AI in your environment. And of course, like I said, the brain drain, because you are now subletting AI. And don't forget, AI agent, for example, is intelligent enough to always update its intelligence. So each time you give it prompt, each time you even argue with it, each time you even tell it or you oppose whatever responses it gives, it tends to look and rethink that prompt or the responses that it has given you, and then update it. And the next person that will be using, that will be prompting that agent or prompting that AI, LLMs, the person will be getting a more accurate result. But the person did not know that there are some people that have actually argued with this AI, opposed it. Even so, there was a time. Let me give you a scenario where I was. It's funny, but it actually happened. I was engaging Copilot, and Copilot said, "I am not arguing with you." Do you understand? So I had to call my colleague. Sometimes when you hear something, it's always difficult to believe until you have an eyewitness. So I said, please come and see this thing. Copilot said, "I am not arguing with you."
Not behaving like me.
And it went further to say, we have stubborn auditors, we have this, we have that. And for stubborn auditors, you need to respond to them like that, like this, sorry. And I said, no, I'm not talking about stubborn auditors here. What I'm saying is this. Yeah, it's fine, I've heard you. So it's still that engagement. Now, this goes further to say that it is not just taking in your prompts, it is actually bettering its own intelligence.
I
It's
think our
actually
conversation that we stored or use in ChatGPT, Copilot, I think they are used to train the future
the
AI.
model. Yes,
Yeah.
they train these models, and they tend to. And another thing, I want to say again is, yes, people tell you, okay, there is an agreement and an NDA, like I said before, with the bank or with the oil firm or with your company, wherever you work, and you sort of now rely on that non-disclosure agreement. I think that is, uh, I think I don't want to use, I think they are fapping sometimes, for lack of better words, because sometimes you wonder how people get your data.
Yeah.
You wonder when people do what's it called again? Stuffing, or they tend to actually go on the wild or in the wild to extract some. You're wondering, how did these guys get my data? Of course, those companies or those service providers have service agreements with non-disclosure agreements with the company. But however, you need to, the first responsibility lies with you. You need to ensure that what's it called? You need to ensure that whatever it is that you are doing is well governed, right? Now, another thing again is, there is a distinct, because I'm seeing a comment on the chat. There's a distinct, there's a distinction between an AI agent. AI, always remember, AI is machine. However you want to do it is programmatic, is programmed to do A, B, C, or X, Y, Z. But the human is different. That's why they say humans are different. You know, so wherever you want to use machine to do ABC, even in your incident response, when you're carrying out a response to an attack or an incident, there is a level of response that AI can do. There gets to a point where the human intelligence would now come in to say human would decipher which is actually a noise, right, from a true positive, right? Of course, they are building these models to be more intelligent, to be more accurate, to be more human-like. But there's a reason why blood flows through our veins, why machines, digits, zeros and one, bits flows through them. You understand? So yeah, we are seeing your chat
Yes,
at boy creation. So we'll
yes.
come to that. Okay,
Boy
go ahead.
Creature um, upload a comment and say, I still wonder how software engineers feel comfortable allowing AI agents, which learn and evolve from human inputs, to have access to environment variables and AI keys.
Okay.
Yeah.
Manuel,
So
what's going on?
yes. So I would say I'll say I'm guilty. I'm guilty about this. Maybe I'm not a software engineer, but I can say I'm guilty of this. So like I said, when I was creating or by coding, trying to create or bring an idea to life, something I've been passionate about for a while, but maybe not having maybe the resources to get hire a lot of software developers to do something. So I just said, okay, let me see what I can do with this AI or these LLMs that are out there, even maybe Cloud Code, while using Gemini and all those other ones. And yeah, during the development stage, because to some extent you have to give these AI agents plus LLMs access to your systems. Somehow sometimes you're even giving it access to maybe GitHub so that it's easier for it to just push after maybe creating some stuff. It automatically helps you to push and some of those other things. And so you see it's also engaging directly with the back end of your application. For example, you're using maybe Firebase or one other a different backend system. So somehow you have to. It has access to your API keys. It has access to environmental variables and all of those other things. Yeah, definitely risks exist because I spoke about how the AI platform or how the particular LLM I was using pushed the API keys to the public, to the private. Okay, it was a private GitHub that I was using, so the project was private, so it pushed it there, and it was visible. So anyone who, if it were to be a public project, that means anyone who could pull the Git resources and everything would have seen those API keys, and with that, that's already a vulnerability in the system, and that could lead people to have unnecessary access to the mobile application or the web application that was building. So yes, I think what's important, I don't think we can entirely do without maybe giving the AI this access, but you need to understand how to be secure in terms of secure development. So you need to know that your API keys shouldn't be public. You shouldn't even putting the API keys directly on those platforms. And if you're putting it, you need to find a way to um, limit the access. So you're looking at authorization, permissions, API restrictions. So who can access it? What platform can they access it on? Are you whitelisting the people that are accessing it? So there has to be some controls around that. But yeah, it's a major risk. It's a major risk. I really love to hear from software engineers how they that integrates AI to their workflow, to see how they manage this, to see how and what they do to, to prevent this type of risk from
So we have
taking it
a
down.
question from the audience here. They said, how can AI agents themselves be tricked into leaking data through prompt injection in API calls?
That's an interesting question. Do you want to speak to that, do I take it?
No, you can go ahead. No problem.
Okay. So how can AI agents themselves be tricked into leaking data through prompt injection in API calls? Um, so it's going to, for you to be able to do this, or for you to be able to trick AI agents to leak certain data, you have to be really skilled, where you are doing a lot of prompting, a lot of text to see where the AI will falter. So, for example, you're using Copilot as your AI agent. Let me use Copilot for an example. Copilot has access to your emails because if you want to schedule a meeting, you want to tell the Copilot, oh, I need excuse me, I need a meeting scheduled at specific time. So they have access to your emails, your calendar to see when you're free so that they can easily schedule the meeting. But then could you put could there be some form of prompting that someone in a different environment or even in the same environment, maybe you as a bank, all of you are using some Copilot subscription. Uh, could I just, because it's linked to your organization, could I on my end as maybe the IT staff or the audit staff using the Copilot, can I type a prompt that gives me some information from the CEO's email, from the CEO's email box? Yes, there's a possibility. But like I said, it has to take multiple trials because these AI agents are really they are smartly built and they have controls um, to prevent you from doing sort things where where you're trying to access data that you're not supposed to access. But yeah, that risk still exists in that kind of system. So I would say you need to be skilled and you need to keep doing lots of trials to be able to inject those prompts or get or type in those prompts that will give you or leak those data. Again, I'm not sure if uh, again it's something I'm still exploring in terms of understanding the how the extent of prompt injection, but I'm sure there are ways again with just persistence you can get those data from those AI agents. I hope I answered your question. Okay, I can see.
Was there a confirmation to that?
Yeah, I see a follow up from. Okay, someone was responding to a comment that Boy Creation asked. He said we
Okay,
rotate.
okay, okay.
Yeah, he said we rotate the. So I think this person is a software developer. So he said we rotate the environment variables and API keys in production. Yeah, I think that's important. Just so that you're not just using one key. And again, you never want to hard code anything doing software development. So you're hard coding a password or the API key is just static, because if it's compromised, then everyone could just have access. But if maybe there's a duration of rotating, then I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of securing the APIs.
So
Thank
so
you. Mhm.
yeah, so Emmanuel, makes sense. So to Okafor, right? That's actually a good one. It's because again, best practice is not compulsory. You understand? But again, auditors can actually flag that against your environment. Oh, it's best practice, but our environment is actually peculiar. Our environment is peculiar, so we are doing it this way. But then, humans are actually humans or users, end users usually go for comfort, right? Why ignoring the security? So I'm actually curious to Okafor. So when you say you rotate these keys, the API keys, so in production, now imagine a very large scale enterprise environment where you have so many microservices and services running 24/7, right? So for your API keys, how do you manage to rotate for the users, for the listeners that are on the call? How do you manage to rotate those keys? Because of course, some people, SMEs, they can have few systems, they can tend to do it manually, change the keys and all of that. But how do you tend to manage those keys in a single central control plane where you can click or where you can schedule something and then you see all of these things getting recycled?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting. I would also love to get that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's yeah,
because
because
it,
this is getting feedback or experience from someone who is a software developer. So it's also
exactly.
going to be quite helpful to everyone. So for
Yes.
those just joining, thank you for joining. Welcome to the session where we're talking about where would AI breach you first, API, cloud, or through the user. Um, so welcome. You can ask your questions if you have any questions as you listen. Thank you. So I think based on everything that we've said so far, if for example an organization deals with a lot of maybe APIs, they are dealing with a lot of integrations. What's the best way to ensure that they are not exposing their data or their cloud environments to vulnerabilities that come through their integration with those APIs? And for the people that are, I think this is a two-part question. And then for the people that are lending or giving out their APIs, maybe for public use, how can they secure themselves from any, again, like what we talked about, the what do you call it again? The risks from third party, basically, that supply chain attack. How can the API owners prevent anything like that from affecting their system or from leaking in? The,
Okay. Emmanuel, so is that for them?
I mean, no, I want to have your feedback on that. So maybe it's for you. So let me ask it. Let me ask again. So,
Okay.
um, yeah. So there are organizations right now that they've said, okay, we don't want to get developers. Maybe they are too expensive, or we have people that could act as developers. And we have this thing we are trying to build, this software, this mobile application, and now they are using these LLMs, these AIs. How can they, what steps or measures can they put in place to make sure that whatever API integration they are doing does not expose their sensitive data to the public?
Okay. Um, so, there are security controls. That's why I said governance.
Yeah.
There are policies that when you want to integrate with a third party, for example, a third party integration, you have to One, ensure that the vendor are meeting your requirement. So this is actually a policy-driven implementation or development. You understand?
Yeah.
Because there are a couple of vulnerabilities. I believe many of us understand the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities for APIs. Some of them speaks to the BOLA, that's the broken object level authorization,
Yeah.
the BFLA, that's the broken function level authorization. You also have the misconfigurations. You also have the what is that? Like access controls. So now, in terms of ensuring that you mitigate exposure, you need to ensure that you have controls in place that will prevent some of these or all of these vulnerabilities to be exploited. The first thing first, you need to also ensure that I believe some of us, or for those that don't know, we have brute force, right? Somebody can actually brute force your API endpoint, right, to see if there is any valid credentials that we accepted, or do a credential stuffing against your endpoints based on known credentials in the wild, or also tend to carry out full attack. You know, I can also craft a payload to try to authenticate to an endpoint, even hijack a session, and then the currently engaged user in the session has been hijacked. Now, people are actually even doing some MFA around second level factor authentication around those endpoints. People are actually also ensuring that I don't have what's that called again? Emmanuel, remind me. Where instances where you are seeing what you are not supposed to see. That's actually Ebola vulnerability. I'm trying to remember the vulnerability itself. Um, so if I tend to access an endpoint, imagine I'm saying API slash v1 slash Emmanuel, whatever, Emmanuel 1, and then I got a response. Then I do slash Emmanuel 2, and I'm also getting a response with the same user session. Then it goes to show that there is no control that prevents Ebola
Yeah, it's Bola.
vulnerability. You understand? Because you should not be seeing those information about those users.
Yeah.
That's an exposure on its own. You know, now typically APIs are API in a layman terms, you can use API. You can say API is like a restaurant, right? The user, right, sitting in front of coming to a restaurant, seeing the menu, ordering. The menu is not like the endpoint. Then, of course, the endpoint, the menu is like the web browser. Then the kitchen person or this waiter gets your what's it called, your request, and then goes to the kitchen to go process and then bring back food or
So
drinks.
just
So
about like
that's
communication, right?
say that
Communication
again.
communication between the can be software or
Yeah,
applications.
so the user, so the whole bureaucracy in API is a request and a response.
Mhm.
Whatever
Yeah.
happened between it is just different endpoint talking to themselves. But then
Mhm.
again, communication between the a request and of course the response. So if you have all of these controls in place, it helps to reduce or eliminate the attack radius. You know, because if you are if you are connecting to a third party, you're trying to exhaust a third party services now, like Paystack, like Flutterwave, like QuaraPay, or whatever it is, you're actually calling an API endpoint. So if the API endpoint that you're calling is not parameterized, meaning that it's not properly sanitized to not accept a type of input
Yeah.
or request, right? Trust me, you will be getting data exposure or information exposure. You understand? So if
Mhm.
you also look at an API endpoint, and of course, there is no database or server-side validation that only the client does the validation, there will be exposure. So there are a couple of ways where data exposures could come in. Now imagine when somebody mentioned having to make static your keys, you have a best practice. In short,
Yeah.
that for 2026 today, it's in short, if auditors
You
find
need to
your
be
your,
arrested.
your credentials defined in your code,
You
eh,
need to be arrested.
trust me, if I compromise an AI agent and then start orchestrating attacks, the first thing an attacker wants to do is to carry out reconnaissance. The attacker tends to understand the currently logged on user. What privilege do you have? You understand? When the attacker gets maybe on a Windows AD or a Windows domain, you can actually run the net user local logon and local admin account or who am I or whatever it is on the command prompt to see who is this guy, right? Once I get hold of the privilege of that user, then I can start using it to pivot. God so kind, my job is easy, and the compromised user is a privileged user. The next
Yeah.
thing that comes in is privilege escalation, not escalation again, lateral movement, pivoting to critical endpoints after reconnaissance has been done. So we have, we also have, what's it called? Um, um, Session limiting, right? Where you tend to time out or
Yeah.
block out
Multiple
several
requests. Yeah.
multiple requests or multiple authentication requests to an endpoint for a wrong username or password. Another thing again, Emmanuel, just to put this before you take over the mic, is um, error handling.
Yeah.
You agree
Improper
with me
error
that
handling.
today's some of the programmers, when they develop their UI UX or the backend, they tend to not have good error handling. You
Yeah.
see a wrong password, they give you the same error. You
Yeah.
see a wrong a user not found, they give you the same error. Imagine me trying to carry out fuzzing and I'm getting a response to say this account is not, this is not the type of, no, I can't remember, this password is not allowed. You need to have so numbers and have this pattern and have this pattern. You are giving them too much information that they can craft and try to target you. Lots so kind, they get a
Yeah.
just a single success. Then of course from there everything will become a history. So Emmanuel,
Yeah.
over to you to
So,
further. Yeah,
Chigweze, so
yeah, go ahead.
you said, so to protect API from breaches, we need to have like a strong authentication and authorization.
Very, very key.
Yeah.
If you are not supposed to see it, and people always make mistake of security by obscurity, right? Because
Yeah.
you cannot see this doesn't mean somebody else cannot see it. As I'm looking at Emmanuel now, I'm seeing next secure background. But
Yeah.
does it mean there is nothing behind Emmanuel? So because people at the UI interface, they are seeing a particular what's it called? Interface, for example, they tend to believe that they are secure. But no,
So
AI
that
can
means we
actually
have a
do
zero
much more.
trust, right? Yeah, zero trust.
Yeah, zero trust model, trust nothing, verify everything.
Yeah.
That's the model. Trust nothing, verify everything. So
Okay.
if you're actually a lazy developer that always wants to do things, because trust me, developers hate security guys. Developers hate security guys
Yeah.
because the time to market or the time to go live takes a whole lot of time when you
Yeah.
are actually going through either static or dynamic code scanning. You know, so Emmanuel, over to you, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Emmanuel, before you take over, there's this question here. So from Oka for Collins. For example, if you are using Paystack API keys, you can always rotate them by generating new ones if you suspect something
Something
suspicious is
suspicious
happening.
is happening. Okay. The real
The real
concern
concern
is
is often the
often
third party service.
Okay, I think he was responding to the when we were asking about how he might how a
How
software
he managed
how
to rotate the keys.
to rotate the keys. Yeah, so I think that's important. So some people what they do is, and based on his feedback, I think some what they do is they have a timeline where they say every week we must make sure that all the keys are rotated. So again, there are maybe different services or applications that you can use to rotate the keys, because definitely in a project in an application you're using more than just one key. So maybe they'll say weekly or monthly we must rotate the keys using this system, using this service, and then they do that. So yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
um,
okay. We have
Emmanuel,
another.
yeah, I saw the other question, and we need to also take cognizance of the fact that um, security is not an afterthought.
mhm,
Security doesn't take the back burner. It takes is
yeah,
as good as your operations. Today, that's why they tell you the business objective, sorry, the security objective or the security programs or your risk frameworks must align completely with your business strategy and objectives, right? So
mhm,
when you imbibe this culture of practicing security consciously and intentionally, right, you would now get used to it to a point that you see yourself that you are now very different from the traditional developers. Why? Because I see this response that Emmanuel was trying to elaborate on, that Okafor gave response to. Don't forget, he said if you are using this, if you are using Paystack API keys, you can always rotate them by generating new ones if you suspect. Now, keys are meant to be unique, right?
yeah,
Keys are meant to be unique for a particular service or stuff. So,
yeah,
and it's easy to say you rotate them, but it's also we need to also carefully consider the downtime when you've observed that there is either a compromise or you suspected something, whatever it is, and you want to do a change. That's when the change management has to come in. There have to be a process in place. Of course, there are change management that you undergo through series of approvals and processes and steps to meet your desired change. And there are
yeah,
some immediate change. What's it called again? Um, Emergency change, that's the word, right?
yeah,
So you have to put processes in place for these two scenarios so that at every point in time the developer is not feeling the brunt of the management, because at the end of the day
mhm,
management is all about money.
yeah. Delivery, yes. They just want.
Money. Whatever you want to speak with them, I did an API call, I connected this one. Okay, is my money down or is going up? So you have to practice those security you have to imbibe those security practices as part of your day-to-day operation. So for the um Piri at Pretty Pecky, can attackers use AI to map your cloud infrastructure faster than your own security team? So Emmanuel, if you understood this question, unless Pretty Pecky wants to elaborate further, when you say map your cloud infrastructure faster.
Mm, okay. I think from what okay, can attackers use AI to map your cloud infrastructure faster than the network system? Um, maybe I mean the question might need rephrasing, but from my understanding, perhaps he's asking if the if for example using AI, are you going to be able to easily check a cloud infrastructure? Maybe there's a web application or a server, and then you're able to check, oh, what are the different services on this platform, what are the different applications on this platform, and then from there once you've used AI to get those details quicker, then you can now start doing whatever you want to do. So I'm assuming it's around those
Okay.
yeah, the thoughts is around those lines. But from what I
So,
yeah, go
mhm.
ahead.
So it depends on the control plane, or it depends
Yeah.
on the traffic flow. right? So if you are talking about your AI LLMs or agents in your environment that is authorized for use within your enterprise, or you are speaking from an attacker that wants to do a reconnaissance against your cloud infrastructure, right? To get and to gather information. So, but we'll speak on the two perspectives. So, for your internal infrastructure, of course, it's a no-brainer. One is connectivity. The agent has permission to reach. What does the agent have permission to reach? And what privileges has been granted? So what people tend to do by behavior is that when they have this agent either developed internally or as a service, they allow the default permissions instead of auditing the permissions and giving it the what? Least privilege, adopting the least privilege approach. So if I have an AI agent or AI LLM or capability in my environment, of course, I can just put in those parameters, grant it the required permissions and privilege, and it can help me scan everything. Internet access, whatever it is, goes to my endpoint, do this, and return a comprehensive report for me. So in that regard, right, AI, of course, cannot be compared to humans, right, because it actually amplifies efficiency, productivity, and the likes. Now, if we are coming inbound, an attacker is sitting at the comfort of their home trying to do a reconnaissance against your cloud infrastructure. Then, in terms of an attacker coming from inside and an engineer, a security engineer from an attacker coming from outside and a security engineer from inside, then it now boils down to what is vulnerable. So if I tend to do a scan, what is vulnerable and what is the engineer using? The engineer can actually use AI in the environment to run those reconnaissance or to pull information and then make informed decision, right? While an attacker can sit at the comfort of their home, imagine exposing an S3 bucket, right, that is not properly well configured. You have maybe some other ports to be exposed over the internet. You have a misconfiguration because one of the highest vulnerability on cloud is misconfigurations, because some of the instances are put there are not properly filtered. You have a security groups that allows the cloud, as people on the internet, to talk to your database endpoint or whatever it is on some management ports. You're exposing a database port to the internet. You're exposing a server to port 22, which SSH, right? So all of these things boils down to what is vulnerable. So when they do the reconnaissance and get the list of vulnerabilities on your cloud infrastructure, then the next thing again is the experience of the attacker or the tools that the attacker has at their disposal. So if it's an AI tool that has so many capabilities, then of course they can get every talking points, do a proper discovery in your environment faster than a security engineer that is not even using an AI-powered tool. Man, I don't know if you have some other additions to give. Thank you.
So we have.
No, we cannot hear you. Emmanuel, we cannot hear you. I can hear you, Vivian. Emmanuel, I don't know if your mic.
Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, go ahead, Vivian. Thank you.
Okay, so we have another question here. But before we take this question, let's I want to send a poll. Can you see the poll?
Yeah, okay, we can see the poll on the chat.
So
we can see the poll, yeah.
yes.
Okay.
So where do you think AI will bridge you first? So I want to hear from the audience. You can drop your answers on the comment section here.
Okay. Yes. So, as while we attend to the poll, there's a question asked by Pretty Techie. What's the one mistake companies make with AI powered APIs that attackers exploit first? Um, so I think it's mostly first of all giving the AI all the access that it needs without knowing what access you've given it. Because if you're giving it all the access and saying, "Oh, help me implement this, help me link this API, help me create this, help me do that," if you don't know all the things that um, you've given it access to, that already opens up a vulnerability in your environment, in your web application, your mobile application. But I think that's the major mistake that I think people working with AI APIs would most likely face. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. But again, you can't really say except there are different all these vulnerabilities that we talked about, the IDOR, the Bola, and all those other ones. You can't really know they might exist in the system. So it's until you do the scan, you will know the one and everything. Sometimes they are different, and an attacker can decide to exploit an IDOR vulnerability first before Ebola or a different one. So it just depends on what they want to exploit first. I hope that answers the question. But yeah, the major mistake is just giving a lot of access to the AI to help you integrate those APIs without knowing what accesses you've given it. Then that becomes a problem and difficult to manage. Then I think there's a final question here. Just as we by boy creation, just as we have beneficial AI agents that ask for permissions before performing tasks, I believe there are also malicious AI agents that bad actors can use to compromise software systems and network. Yeah, definitely. So, malicious AI agents is a thing. Thank you for bringing that up. I know right now every AI is now the new thing, and people download different AI agents that can help you summarize your meetings, that can help you transcribe, and then you're linking that to your Teams, you're linking that to your calendar. You just downloaded it, or you just maybe installed it as a plugin, and you don't really know much about the creators of those AI agents. They could be extracting sensitive data from your meetings and sending it somewhere on the cloud. And there's no way you would know if you don't do maybe a Wireshark scan to see where traffic is going to, or if you don't do any scan, you won't know because all those things are done on the background. It's getting the data, it's sending it out on the cloud, and they're telling you that there's privacy because they'll just put it on their website. Oh, you can go ahead and download this plugin and integrate with your Teams, your meetings. We are GDPR compliant, we are NDPR. Okay, in this case, it's not a Nigerian this thing, but we are GDPR compliant. They just tell you we are compliant to all those data privacy stuff, and when you believe them, that could be a different case. So yeah, we've seen AI agents set up by threat actors because they know people want this service, people want something that can help them solve this problem. And the moment you get it installed without testing, without validating, without having the security team monitor it, then I mean it's a major problem for the organization. So you just need to be cautious about any form of AI agents that you're introducing to your organization or to your systems or that you're integrating with.
Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
good.
we there. Okay, cool. So yeah, so to add to that, to the last but one question where Pretty was saying one mistake company makes
Yeah.
AI powered APIs. So one thing again is the is allowing AI to be completely autonomous. Yes, of course, microservices to microservices or microservice to microservice is actually allowing AI can actually do APIs to API. APIs can actually talk to themselves in that on that level, right? You can have an AI integrated in that traffic or in that chain of connection, communication, and the likes. But when you have AI receiving the prompts and all of that, carrying out, executing all of those things without checkers or maker checker. validation and the likes. The AI understands inputs. You get an input. Imagine that input has been there's an injection in that input. AI will still go ahead to fetch based on the request that's been given or the instruction. So what AI sees is everything is an instruction. Whether you meant it this way or you meant it that way, however you craft your payload or however you craft your request, is how AI will bring it for you. So you need to ensure that that false sense of autonomy, because if you see a person, you can say this person can make meaningful judgments. So that judgment attribute, that judgment capability is where we need to watch out. You also need to also do some simulations, like a POV, like a POC, like a silo, like a pilot testing, to be sure of all the first thing first. You need to have use cases, right? That you want to play with. You need to have something off the top of your head, some list of success criteria that you want to check against, so that when you are having all of these interactions, you are getting the attributes, and that attribute the AI is giving you will make you to further fine tune or will make you to further tweak whatever it is that you need to tweak, so that AI don't expose your data, AI don't get AI agents don't allow or be an entry point for compromise. So again, like I said, the watch and the key factor here is the judgment part of the AI, allowing it to do end to end, this thing without due diligence. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think those we've answered all the questions. So just to round up from my end, I think the takeaway from my end would be sorry, just 1 minute. Okay. um, so the takeaway from my end will be for organizations. So if you're looking to implement anything that has to do with AI, first thing or the most important thing is to make sure whoever is doing the implementation, the integration, understands and implements secure coding practices, especially with OWASP top 10, for example, either for mobile or for web. So for me, when I was doing the development, it was as easy as telling this is for those that want to create or integrate or use AI with their integration. So you want to tell it, um, make sure you are using OWASP security, OWASP top 10 while you are developing this application. So because the AI or the LLM you're using already has that, it's already been trained with those data, it understands what those vulnerability entails. So when it's coding for you, it's going to apply those it's going to make sure it doesn't falter in any of those top 10 vulnerabilities. So that's one thing to take note of for those that are vibe coding, for organizations that are developing softwares with AI. So that's one thing to take note of. I think a second one is to make sure that your API keys are not pushed publicly to Git. So you might want to, again, if you're using LLM to do the development, might want to ask it, is there anywhere in this integration? Because AI gives you exactly, it doesn't lie. It can hallucinate, but in terms of when it has actual data, it won't lie to you. If it has something, it won't say, oh, I don't have it. So when you can ask it, is there any place in this development or since this integration, is there any place where you have my API keys publicly exposed or publicly pushed to this GitHub project? Then it's going to tell you this instance are where we highlighted these API keys. So you can now correct that. Again, once you ask it, it's going to give you that response. It's not going to lie to you because it's giving you based on existing data that it has. Then I think another thing is always test. We can't stress that enough. Before deployment, before you go live, before you take any software that has to do with API integration to production, you need to test. Do all the tests. Go through all the endpoints. If you need to, if you don't have any skilled professional, I think you can reach out to NextSecure. NextSecure has professionals that can help you do all those application testing. You can do DAST, SAST, and all those things. So it helps you. So you check it, you can run through those different API endpoints and check, is there any vulnerability that currently exists in in what I've built. So if there are, then you definitely don't want to deploy that. I know with management and with timeline, everyone is always pressuring, oh, let's deploy, let's put it out in production. Sometimes you hear things like, while we put it out, if you find any vulnerability, we'll fix it. It doesn't really work that way. You need to make sure you are 99%, and you've done all those tests, all those call it a pen test or on that application before you put it out, just to make sure that those API integrations and everything, there's no vulnerability there and there's no exposure in that front. Then I think the final thing would be API restrictions is really important. Restrict it for every endpoint. So you want to restrict it. You don't just want to grant full access to everyone except to the public API, but still there are still restrictions. Either you want to like this and say only IPs, only requests coming from personal IPs are allowed to access these APIs, or only an authenticated user, and not just being authenticated. So you have this token. So there are different things, but you need to always apply restrictions. Maybe you can only access it via mobile app or via web or via, but there must be restrictions. If there are no restrictions, then that already introduces a major problem in your whatever API integration you have. Then again, we've already talked about securing um, the your API keys. So the best practice would be to rotate them, like someone also mentioned. Yeah, I don't know if Chigozie or Vivian, if you have any final thoughts on this, you can also share, or if you want to add to something I said, and also do that.
Okay, Vivian is wrapping up. So my final 2 cents is to always ensure that you don't leave security behind. Security should not be an afterthought, right? It's something that we need to take more seriously. And of course, like Emmanuel has rightly said, if you need very reliable and experienced software testers or security assessors, you can also always go to Next Secure for such services. It's a lot of dependable staffers for manpowers. Thank you for listening and thank you for having us here.
All right. So our speakers, Mr. Chubeze and Mr. Emmanuel, thank you for your expertise, your condo, and your time today. Your perspective have given us our audience a great deal to think about and act on. So to our audience, thank you for joining us from across different locations for your engagement, your questions, and your votes. You are exactly why conversation like this matter. So cybersecurity is not just a technical problem; it is a people problem, a process problem, and leadership problem. And communities like this are how we solve it together. So I'm Vivian, your host. Stay curious, stay secure, and we'll see you at the next one. Thank you and have a good afternoon. All right,
Okay, thank you everyone. Bye bye.
bye.